to participate in the democratic processes in the Republic. Whatever I was quoting was a chunk, was a part from our standard, which is one of the 8 competencies which we have incorporated in the strategy, which is the media literacy of our students, which we want to achieve. We want to achieve that each student, whatever I just described, skillfully masters and analyzes and applies in their life. Of course, this implies a huge work, which can, of course, change the picture of our society, because when we speak about the factors impacting the media environment, obviously the media literacy, media education level of the public becomes one of the critical aspects, factors. And in this regard, education system has a special commitment and obligation. As such, the democratic societies cannot ensure democracy without proper level of media literacy, which ensure the participatory approach to this process is accountability and transparency. And in this regard, we are in a complex reality right now, where the news flow is kind of confusing us, perplexing us, and it doesn't give us doesn't allow us to orient ourselves and make proper decisions. And in this regard, media literacy becomes an important precondition for the formulation of the behavior in the modern societies. And if you don't have media literacy, you become vulnerable to to the news inflow, and you become under the influence of various groups who can guide you to act this or that way. So therefore, the the role of education is to make media literacy a part of our public education and make it a basis, a basic part of education. And it is not it is no surprise that the threshold of literacy has changed to media literacy, and this media literacy has become a characteristic of literacy in general. A number of media literacy activities are taking place, but I cannot say they are sufficient to achieve the required result, and for that we need to set rules in the media sector and to establish certain standards and regulations. And by summing up, I would like to reiterate as a representative of the Ministry of Education to speak about the journalism education. I do not think that today the level of journalism education is sufficient to combat the challenges which are there in our reality. And here we are facing problems. We know that we are in the process of intense changes in the higher education system, and we have much to do to improve the standards and quality of journalism education, and by doing so to create to engage the highly qualified specialists in the field. For example, in the field of education, a number of activities, events are taking place, and if we try to find in how many people there are in our media sector who can speak about these changes, about the awareness, about by having this quality according to standards, we can find very few of such experts. And we can say the same about other spheres. We do not have the experts because we lack the environment. And here, regardless of the level of media literacy, the flows that you participate in do not allow you to be informed, do not allow you to orient yourself in an informative environment, which means that this is a multi layered process. Of course, we should educate our adults and children to become more literate, but also we should improve the quality of media flow so that the environment leads to quality debate and discussions in the field. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Andreasen. Since you spoke about the need for rules in the media sector, I would like to give the floor to Mr. Ghazarian. It is your area of expertise, so you please tell about your initiative. You mean the research that has been conducted? Yes. So before this research, a broader research was conducted. So we're talking about the question whether it is possible to prevent hate speech or other types of unlawful dissemination of unlawful narratives. And these international best practices have been studied, and we have come to the conviction that it is legally possible to coordinate by a legal model, because we had previously we had the coordination model by the organization, which is not applicable, and after that we started self-organization. But with the development of technologies, we are facing, the state is facing many more risks in terms of public order, the human rights, where the private sector would not want to take all the burden. And here we have the European Union, which started to support the systematization of the field from 2012 to 2013, and we have proposed this model to the National Assembly and the private sector, and the resistance is coming not from the legislative body but from the private companies, by ISPs, the service providers, by operators. And their main argument was that the broker organization should not and cannot coordinate the content. They are just servicing the network. And if you want to bring them to the field so that they check information, it becomes censorship. And it is a restriction on the freedom of speech. And this, after February, when the major organizations, TikTok, Facebook, moved to the standards, administrative standards developed by Council of Europe. So what is coordination model? It is when the roles are distributed between state and private sector, and in any structure that you are going to introduce should not hinder the freedom of speech, the information which is moving from source to the public through the journalists mainly and other actors. So how to distribute the roles? Co-coordination implies the following: the state develops standards and the private applies these standards. The state does not participate in the application process of the standards. It is not participating in blocking the content or deleting the content. It just develops the standards, and this private sector on regular basis, for example, every 6 months, informs reports to the government how the standards were working, not, for example, in terms of the problems that occurred, in terms of the gaps, in terms of statistics. So the European Union has already started to apply from February. Has to apply this model from February this year. All the major organizations are accountable to European Committee, and the European Committee does not interfere with their content development, content production. For example, I'm speaking about digital service law. The main idea is that major organizations make a lot of reveal a lot of things for the state. For example, in terms of AI, and the state has developed certain risk categories for the use of AI. For example, the state checks if these standards of the use of AI are observed, and what we have developed is mainly soft power regulations, guidelines. So let's assume that there is this state body which is coordinating, and the private companies which lead the internet community. For example, the internet community, the registrars who sell the domains to the private sector. For example, individuals are included in the media. There are no media outlets which do not have a website. So there is but the challenges are so big here, given this recent technologies of the artificial intelligence, and another legal act came into force from May 1 regarding the artificial intelligence, but it is very careful about AI because it might face certain resistance from the public. So is it possible to develop this model in Armenia? We think that yes, and we have proposed there is an organization of internet control committee about which nobody knows about which, because it is unclear what they are engaged in. So we want to put this organization on solid ground, on solid foundations. And then the next is the internet community, which is governing the .am domain, all the .am domain, and with its distribution, it is equal to the public television. Of course, this .am covers all Armenia, just as the public TV. And who can argue that the internet is not competing with the public, with TV? Of course, they have certain regulations, but they are passive. So we see two branches of actors. One is the internet community, which applies the standards, which is going to be developed by the internet control body, and it will be reporting to the state on how the standards work. And of course, this internet community is managing the registrars who sell domains and who receive signals from the users, whether there is disinformation or hate speech or any unlawful content. So this is one domain. The second domain, which is more complex, is the operators. These are the private companies who, however, are licensed by the state. For example, Viva, Team, etc. And they do not want to enter the field of self-organization because they believe that licensing is sufficient. But and the most important argument is that they are servicing the network, and they should not tap the network. Of course not, but there might be signal coming from the user that this network is generating hate speech, and you are the ones who acquire a license, and this committee is the one that gives the license. And by law, there is a provision that this license can be revised and administrative penalties can be applied. So this is we need here brainstorming, we need clarification of the terms here, but the main idea of the coordination is this. So the decision is made by the private sector, because and the test is whether this structure can endanger the flow of content or not, and the state is developing standards on which they are going to be reported. I'm sorry for being so long. It is a comprehensive topic. Thank you, Mr. Khazarian. Now I would like to give the floor to Mr. Mamian. You are the head of Infocom media outlet. So while forming your content Can you speak about how fake news, how disinformation affects your activity, your scope of activities?
Again, we have to come back to media literacy to answer this question. And because if the society is literate, is media literate, then the possibilities of the spread of such content become very limited. But because the public does not have this level of media literacy, the independent media will have issues in reaching larger audiences, generating income, and correspondingly having larger independence. And so it's the story of the hen and the egg. So is it because the public is not media literate and that's why disinformation and fake news or manipulative news are being spread? On the other hand, this possibility creates problems for the media who adhere to the ethics standards, and so they are not able to reach larger audiences. When it comes to the topic of media literacy, of course, we understand that at the level of standards, we are addressing this issue, but I have the impression that in Armenia, all the ruling parties have not really wanted to have a media literate public, because otherwise it would not be possible to have this mushroom websites which are handled by some members of the staff of the Prime Minister. And of course, the ethics standards are also a big problem here. So apart from this level of standards, we should also try to see what we have on the ground and what changes we are heading for, and whether the government announced by the policy is in line with their actions. When we are speaking about reducing this information, fake news, we should also see what actions are taken by the ruling party who is advancing this agenda, this policy. And I would also like to address an objective factor, which is that the market in Armenia is small. By saying market, I mean Armenian content and this maximum consumption capacity of the media. So this is also very important for the media in terms of achieving independence. So if you compare it with content generators in other languages, so their potential audience may be dozens of millions people. In case of Armenian content, we only deal with maximum of 2 million of potential audience, which actually reduces the possibility of making use of advertisements. So to ensure that the media are self-financed. And it's not a secret that self-financing is one of the main safeguards of independence of the media. And hence, we have this objective problem. Of course, there are also other factors. I would also like to mention another factor. Again, I want to speak about the government or like state public authorities. The law enforcement, it's about the attitude of public authorities, law enforcement authorities towards the activity of the media, the publications of the media. So if we are having these discussions in the context of democracy, then we should realize that we should see how the oversight function of the media works. And we see that it's not always that the investigations of the media receive proper reaction by the government. I will bring an example from Infocom. 5 months ago, we had a publication about the election campaign financing of the ruling party and the origin of the financing and the mechanisms that were used. Until now, no action has been taken by any law enforcement authority. No meaningful action has been taken. And the ruling party has just been limited to an apology by the Prime Minister for what happened. So if we're speaking about democracy, if we had this system of checks and balances in reality, I think we wouldn't face such a situation. And on the other hand, if we had a media literate society, again, the ruling party would face serious problems here in this regard. Thank you, Mr. Maman. And now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Angela Gzderian, Head of Strategic Communication and Participatory Governance Reform Programs in the Office of the Prime Minister. I don't know whether I should ask this question to you or not, Ms. Gzderian, but anyhow, Mr. Maman was raising an issue, quite a problem about the frankness of the government in its efforts to handle the media reform. Sorry, I have a problem with my voice. I apologize in advance for that. The government is committed to undertake reform in the communication sector, and it is high on our agenda. During the previous panel, we mentioned that not only political will is important, which this team has this political will, but you should have infrastructure and mechanisms as well. So within the framework of this reform, we are creating this management infrastructure. Within the framework of this communication reform, we are changing the architecture of strategic communication, which is about capacity building, creation of coordination mechanisms, development of standards. We spoke a lot about standards today, and for professional activity, the standards are essential. And it's also about creation of procedures and protocols. We are speaking also about crisis communication, dissemination of disinformation. And if we want the experts in the government to be able to respond to crisis, there should be proper procedures in place. And these protocols, ethics norms are in our agenda, and we are now working towards the creation of these documents. And my colleagues also spoke about the importance of media literacy and education in general. Ms. Anderson mentioned that we have a lack of human resources. I very often say that strategic communication is quite a young sector in Armenia, in the world, including in Armenia. And hence, we do not have many strategic communication experts. And we have a challenge to prepare these experts to build their capacities to be able to face the challenges. And when we are speaking about strategic communication reform, it's not only about management infrastructure, which will allow for proactive publicity. I mean, we know that proactive publicity is one of the main ways to handle disinformation, but we should also speak about the ecosystem. In this for this ecosystem, our cooperation with the journalists and civil society are essential. If I speak about the factors impacting state communication, maybe the first one are these management related factors, which is about creation of infrastructures to ensure the media freedom and the transparency of the media. But another factor is the sociocultural peculiarities, features. As a society, we should understand the do's and don'ts for us. So are we considering it acceptable that swear words used, for instance, in the media? We are also speaking about standardization, which will be important for ensuring proper cooperation. But I think we also have problems to deal with problems related to behavioral change. And another factor I would like to speak about are these external impacts, the so-called hybrid war. I think that if we are able to create proper infrastructure, if we are able to have a public consensus on this, we will also be able to address this hybrid wars. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Kashtarian. Now I would like to give the floor to Ms. Nelly Rafaelian, producer of Media Initiative Center. Please, don't call me Mrs. Well, as Kashtarian mentioned, for the ecosystem to become more healthy, cooperation with civil society organizations is of utmost importance. I know that you are involved in a number of initiatives that refer to media literacy. Could you speak a little bit more about that? Will you allow me to say something with regards to what Mr. Hazarian said? I have a piece of information I would like to share, which I heard during this so-called reggaeton annual event. So this concern that licenses should be reviewed. What did you mean by reviewing this licenses for unlawful illegal content? So if actually the participants of the event were very much concerned about these issues related to illegal content. They are viewing this problem from the perspective of business. So if they feel any risk to their businesses, they may withdraw from .am space and go to .com space. So this is not a solution to the issue. They were providing figures on how many registrations we have for .am, and this was not a very, it was quite a sad picture, and the number of registrations were quite small, and I think they will not go for that. When it comes to this, well, to self-regulation, we have a problem. A number of reports show that we have a gap in public trust. So the public does not trust the media overall, and this is a major challenge. So starting from the kitchen to the highest levels, people say, close those media. Can't you see what they are writing, what news they are spreading? But it's obvious that in a country which is striving for democracy, you cannot close media. You cannot even have a conversation about that. And so the only task we should have for ourselves is ensuring self-regulation. So what self-regulation means? It may not be apparent to all of you. For all of you. So it's a voluntary commitment when the media decide that they have to work based on certain professionalism and ethic-based norms and should be guided by ethics codes and guidelines, which have already been prepared. We also have this ethics observatory body, which has its charter. So it's a package of rules, and around 82 media outlets have already joined this self-regulatory initiative. So these are the media that have decided that they are going to adhere to these professional standards. And I will give you an example. One of the media outlets who had joined this in self-regulatory initiative, they were continuously violating the ethics code, and they were removed from the self-regulatory body. I will not give the name of the media outlet. It's also available on the in open sources. We mostly rely on and to focus on self-regulation for the media to realize that they should be guided by these rules. So what will be their benefit? So the media should also know what benefits they can derive from their participation in this initiative. The observatory body has started an initiative. It's a so-called white list. It's a logotype, which the media who have joined this self-regulation initiative can take this logo and put it on their website. And the media consumer, whenever they enter the website and see this logo, they can be assured that this media is following the ethics norms and has a certain level of professionalism. So this logotype, to put this logotype, the media should adhere to at least three standards. The most important ones. The one is they should join a self-regulatory initiative. They can build their own self-regulatory initiative or join this initiative or have an so-called ombudsman. I think the public TV may also have the media ombudsman's institution soon. The second condition is specific identification of the media. So their address should be specified, their legal address should be specified, and stuff should be specified. And of course, the third condition is the financial transparency of the media. We should know who is the owner of the media, where they receive funds from, and which donor organizations they cooperate with. For instance, if this project works and if we have media where when you go to their website and you will see their logotype and will trust this media more, this may be an impetus for this media. They may also become more appealing for the advertisers, and why not for the donor organizations, because donor organizations will also want to spend their funds on a quality media outlet. Let's see how this initiative will work. Hopefully we will succeed. And I also, if there is time, I would like to speak a little bit about a small initiative starting 2019. The self-regulation process is ongoing in Armenia, and it is also done by just ordinary journalists like me, media experts, etc. And also the representatives of the regulatory and self-regulatory bodies. It's a project funded by SIDA. It has a long name. I think it was called Media Development and Democratic Regulation Principles in the Modern Era, something like that. Is the name of the project. So it's done with 3 countries: Armenia, Moldova, and Ukraine. So recently, we have returned from Brussels. Before that, we were in Sweden. We were studying the Swedish experience of self-regulation, what self-regulation mechanisms they have, what institutions they have, how they work. So we are now back here, and we are trying to take something from this best practice and use it in our context. Of course, we also have our own projects. We task ourselves. We actually have certain tasks for ourselves, like what we are going to do on an annual basis. Because I'm short of time, I will be limited to this, but I just wanted to mention that if this initiative succeeds until the end of the year, then there will be a good opportunity for the success of self-regulation in Armenia, of the media in Armenia. Thank you very much. We will speak about the best practice of your partners. I would like to ask a few questions to the speakers before we go to the audience. Ms. Andreasen, when it comes to the sources of the low level of media literacy, you already mentioned that the media literacy standards have already been introduced in schools. Can you please mention to what extent they have been introduced in schools? Because if I'm not mistaken, we have around 40,000 teachers working in Armenia. So do you think are teachers media literate, and can they convey this knowledge to the students? So have you finished working with the teachers on media literacy? I don't think that at any stage, in any country, any Ministry of Education will say that they have completed working with the teachers, because it's a continuous work, it's a continuous effort. And I think that the professional development of teachers should not stop at any moment. Of course, to say that all our teachers are media literate and have mastered the required skills, of course, we cannot say that, but there is a difference and there is progress, and that's apparent. Generally, when you have this major reform, methodologically, it is always correct to try to compare the situation you had with the current situation. And from that perspective, I think we definitely have progress. And I have to tell you here that the pandemic helped us in this regard, because the pandemic led to this major development in technologies. And even the teachers who could not have assumed that they would ever use modern technologies and new tools, they were forced to do that during the pandemic. And we can see that the education sector also became a platform for use of creative and innovative approaches, and these approaches are still being used. So the media literacy component is mandatory in professional development programs of the teachers. A few years ago, we also had this, we established the standards where media literacy and development capacities, building capacities are an important element. But the process that we imagine, it's not a hierarchical process. We should leave the role when somebody is teaching and the other one is just consuming the knowledge. Actually, our students are active media consumers and media generators. And I think that in this regard, we should view the education process as a horizontal one, as a cooperative one. And sometimes maybe even the teachers can learn from the students. And this new standard gives an opportunity for this through project-based learning and other tools. Anyhow, I think that our teachers are very motivated to learn, and during today's the ideas that were voiced during today's discussion, the projects, the plans, I think it would be great to share it with the representatives of the education system as well. We have had years of cooperation with the Media Initiative Center within the framework of the Media Literacy Week every November, which includes different education programs, training, and we have a lot of participation and interest, which shows that the education system is ready to learn, ready to take knowledge and skills and ready to borrow them. So we should just work together on this. When it comes to the frankness of the communication of the government, because I'm a representative of the government, I think I should address this concern as well. I think we are dealing with the same problem here. Your observations can, we are not saying that, speaking about that, because we think that the people who are in a given position at a certain point of time and have certain possibilities to act, they are more protected, and hence they should be, while they are speaking, they should be silent. But you know, this seeming protection is in reality a deep level of being unprotected. And I can even speak about my own experience in this regard. One of the main issues in the media is this very low level of responsibility. For me, the main peculiarity of the profession of a journalist is responsibility for what you say. Something that is completely violated. It is violated at every step, in every step, and I think we have a lot of challenges in this regard to deal with. When it comes to the frankness of the government and their efforts, I think that one of the main indicators of freedom is the number of intermediaries and intermediary chains. The more intermediaries you have, the less your level of frankness, because when you have too many intermediaries, the information is distorted. Currently, we are in a situation when the number of intermediaries is at a minimum level, and I think that in this regard, the communication accessibility of the government and government members is on a high level. And this also testifies to the fact that this information is listened to and there is a willingness to respond and react to it. As Ms. Kashdarian mentioned, we have a major problem with capacity building. In reality, communication requires professional resource and capacities, and we have major problems here. But there is the will and commitment, and I think there can be no doubt about it.
Thank you, Ms. Andreasen. Mr. Mamian, I have a question addressed to you. So, based on what you said and on my personal journalist experience, I can say that considering our media environment, the media outlets are forced to compete with fake news. Do you agree or disagree with it? And in your opinion, what solutions and what initiatives should be taken by the civil society, by the government, by the media outlets in order to change and improve the situation in the sense that your consumer, the media consumer, who you believe that should be the consumer of your media content, prefers the content that you have produced and not the mushroom websites or other unknown websites. Thank you. So there is a common idea that fake news is spreading more rapidly than the verified news. And in this regard, in terms of the fight against it, there are not many steps. There is the main step about which we're going to talk a lot today, which is the raising increase of media literacy, and I think that it is it lies with the Ministry of Education, but the media outlets should also educate their audience to collect the trust due to which the public, each member of the public will have a preferred one or two media outlets whom they will trust, whom they will regularly check, and they should also check what they read with another sources. So it comes back to the media literacy again. But I think that in the education standards, while incorporating media literacy at the school level, I hope that it will succeed and this process will be successful and efficient. And on the other hand, media has its work to do, and not only in terms of media literacy, but also in Armenia, we have very little experience and toolkit for efficient communication with our audience, and I think that this issue of communication, when it is conveyed to the government, we have also the problem of using the feedback from our audience So media has a lot of work to do within itself. So thank you, Ms. Khashdarian. Ms. Andreasen mentioned that in order to organize communication effectively, the more direct it is, the more efficient it is. Would you agree or disagree with it? And in terms of your programs, if I'm not mistaken, the program that you coordinate is aimed at improving the communication within the government and with the public. So what steps are you taking toward this? Toward improving communication with the public, and what is the minimum best result of the program? Because there are opinions that your communication, so the communication between the government and public is intermediated. So what is your take on this? It is hard to disagree with Ms. Andreasen that one of the most important factors of transparency of the government is the communication with the civil society members, with its partners, with the public. And in the framework of the reform of public communication, we are placing emphasis on the participatory mechanisms. We are prone to form mechanisms which will engage our citizens in decision-making processes. This is another topic of discussion, but I would like to emphasize that, as Mr. Prime Minister noted in the first panel, the main point of our reforms is institutionalization, and this applies also to this reform. We want to have institutional mechanisms for public for communication. You spoke about the interministerial communication, and yes, the communication with public is linked with with the communication within the government. So these are the components of public communication, and the institutionalization, the reform, the capacity building will inevitably lead to the improved communication with the public, to the transparency, participatory mechanisms. And as we talked a lot, any reform is time-consuming, takes a lot of time, and the reforms also imply cultural and behavioral changes, and it applies also to communication reform. That's why I mentioned the need for an ecosystem so that we can set our borders with our ethical norms, what is permitted to a public official to do or not to do, whatever. If a public official is expressing an opponent view, it means freedom of speech. But is the opposite also welcomed? So we are open to hear the recommendations from the expert community, so that we come up with unified ethical norms and rules, so that we proceed ahead together in a joint manner. So I would like to speak about disinformation. When we speak about communication, the first reaction we have is the fight against disinformation. So the toolkit to fight against disinformation is various. It is proactiveness, media literacy, but in terms of behavior, we need to understand that people have many prejudices, and the media outlets are come to confirm these prejudices. For example, if a citizen believes in something, he or she sees that a lot on his or her page. So if they are following fake news, they will see more fake news on their page. So standardization of the coordination have a great role, but we need to have a comprehensive toolkit to have effective results. As for cooperation, we are very open to all the comments and suggestions. and we have had a number of participatory discussions, and it seems we have a consensus on the direction we are heading. But if there are any proposals for cooperation, we are open to that. Thank you. Mr. Ghazarian, my question is addressed to you. So you talked about the role of the manual for the regulation of the online domain. I want to know your opinion as an expert as to about if does the state have to take steps of regulating internet because there is an international practice which gives freedom to it, and there are a number of European examples who try to have certain regulations. In your opinion, in terms of having a democratic and free society, which path is appropriate? I spoke about it. I'm speaking about the coordination model. So you spoke about European Union. They have quite serious interference in the sphere. They have about 400 million market, and there is this legal act on artificial intelligence, and before that DMA, DMS were in place, which oblige the Facebook and TikTok, Google Map, and other major organizations to reveal, to identify the problems for the users. And if we have a system, although the main actor is the private sector, which determines the disinformation, hate speech, whether it should be blocked or deleted, etc. In fact, it is the ordinary user who makes this system work. Here, the state is being informed by the private sector about the secrets of their users. For example, if there is an advertisement, we know that there are hidden mechanisms of advertisement. For example, the so-called marketing. I wouldn't call it a lawful marketing. They track the user and they choose what advertisement should be shown to them. For example, so people are choosing whatever robots are choosing for them. So we cannot make the private sector not to use these technologies because and we're coming from the back door. So we're trying to force the private to disclose what mechanisms they are using. They're disclosing it to the user, and then the user is making a decision, and this gives a balance to the free market rules. And we will be forced to use these rules, this model in our society. Why? Because if we want to be associated with the European Union, it seems that this decision is in place. We sooner or later will borrow these technologies. But why should we wait if we can develop them ourselves? So you said that there was a meeting between the registrars and the internet community. They had a closed meeting, but here we need a dialogue with the state agencies, with the government, and we need a lot of dialogue so that they clarify their positions, and so that we understand what we need in order to apply the co-coordination model, because the whole world is heading toward co-coordination, because the philosophy is, as I mentioned, is that the state develops the standards and the private applies them. European Union has just launched it, but it seems that there are no major scandals after several months of its use. There are no cases. There are the cases which are in favor which are in favor of the co-regulation. So there is the challenges are so many due to the new technologies that the private sector cannot bear the whole burden itself only by itself, and the state should support it. And now, so the idea of co-regulation should not hinder the freedom of information. So we should think about pilot models to see how they work. And here we need self-regulation bodies, observation bodies, freedom of speech committee, and state agencies and registrars and operators to sit together and negotiate, and not that operators say we don't want to enter the field of content, it doesn't refer to us, and the internet community should not say that we're just selling the domains, but we should think about our security, because we are in a war situation and the technologies are continue to develop, and we don't know what surprises, what other surprises to expect. The technologies are the biggest challenge, and they bring changes in our agenda. For example, if new technologies comes up, it takes a few years to develop regulations, and then another technology comes up, which eliminates all the previous regulations. So this legislation development is quite a complicated process. So the short question to Nelly. So you spoke about self-regulation mechanisms. You said that media outlets should self-regulate. Why should media outlets be motivated to self-regulate? I would imagine that major actors who like to speak about ethics would join this initiative, but what about the other problematic ones? In fact, you're speaking about a major issue, considering the political polarization in our country and the extreme polarization of media. It is quite a complex topic to understand, because also we have an issue of funding of the media outlets because they need to survive. And in this case, this is the biggest of all questions. But in any case, in terms of the trust of the public, we have a lot to do here, because if the media outlet loses its trust at some point, and many have already lost their trust, the public will unfollow them. And if you lose your followers, what are you going to do? How are you going to earn money? So these are kind of complementary issues, interlinked issues. If you want to earn the trust, you have to take certain steps. Of course, I am in favor of the fact that these media outlets should also have other opportunities of funding, of course, from independent funds, not from the state funds, from which the proper media outlets should refuse. So the independent funds, which are committed to working properly, to observing the standards, and to refrain from disinformation, so which has adopted these principles of giving reliable information and not disseminating disinformation. So this is the key. I think there's hardly any other motivation. Thank you. We will receive questions from the audience. 3 questions. Please introduce yourself and ask your question. Hello, Sada Muradian, Public Journalism Club NGO's director. I would like to address my question to you, Ms. Andreasyan. I would like to share with news about, in the context of media literacy. You are well aware that not only in the primary and public education, these standards have been incorporated, but in the primary education as well. And we could say that Armenia is quite advanced in this regard, because there are very few countries in our region who attach importance to media literacy in public education, in general education. So in a few months, in September, we will introduce a new guideline on media literacy for educators, which has been published with the support of European Union. And it is a guideline developed by the European Union, so we will inform you about this further. What I would like to say, I would like to share my concern. I would like to share with my concern. We started to work on media literacy and on raising awareness on media literacy since 2020 in the schools, and throughout these years, based on my observations, the private schools seem to be left out of control and these processes due to different reasons. For example, the funding of international donors is aimed at the support of general education in the first place. And of course, there are standards which need to be observed by the private sector, by the private schools. But how do you see the inclusiveness of this process, and how can we engage the private schools, and what control mechanisms do you see? Because I think that the private schools also need to participate in these processes. It is not that if they are private, then it means that they are more media literate and their students and teachers are more media literate. So what is your approach on this, and what is the approach of the ministry of this? Let's collect 2 more questions and then move to the answers. Proceed with the answers. Hello, Karine Harutyunyan, Regions TV. In our discussion, our panel discussion is focused on the factors impacting the media environment in Armenia. I have made an observation based on my long years of experience that the media environment is affected by the illiterate population, which is prevalent in Armenia, because I have been in the media field for 20 years, and before that I was in education sector for 15 years, and this is what I have noticed. And the second one is the prevalence of poverty in our country. So I would like to hear your attitude about our assessments and observations, and in case you are interested in why we think so, I will be glad to speak with you privately or even a debate with you. Thank you. If there are any other questions, please. Strela Chandirian, Change NGO. Ms. Anderson, my question is addressed to you. Every time when we speak about education standards, I think that it would be great to study in such a school which would observe the standards, but in parallel, the public is not speaking about one group. These are the groups that have not studied in these schools. They have who lack a high level of media literacy. For example, they rely on public TV, and if they use the internet, they don't have knowledge to protect themselves, and we miss talking about the education of the elderly, and we are an aging country, aging society, so we are omitting this group of the elderly. So do you have any functions or do you have any initiatives, steps taken toward this aim? Thank you, Ms. Andreasian.
Well, first of all, when it comes to illiteracy and poverty, of course, no one can reject that we have a number of problems, and you have to put a lot of effort not to see these problems. Of course, they are in place, but let's avoid, I am skeptical about observations which start with everyone, absolute, with the words everyone, absolute, etc. Reality is multi-layered. There is literacy and there is illiteracy. There is the good and the bad. So, and there is a lot of there are a lot of things where they are mixed. So it's important to properly identify the issue, diagnose the issue, because if we use these labels, we miss out on a big layer of a large layer of reality, and hence our responses will also not be targeted. I think it's not about debating, but just properly diagnosing the reality, which is much more complicated than we put it in our labelings. And I would like to first of all thank the Public Journalism Club for joint cooperation. I want to thank you for your cooperation. We included media competencies in our standards as a capacity that should be developed among the children. The problem you have raised is important. I mean, how we are including private kindergartens and schools in our works. And when it comes to preschool institutions, because we have new licensing conditions under the amended legislation, where we now already have the opportunity to have certain impact. Our cooperation with private schools is even more successful in this regard because we have longer years of cooperation with private schools, and this cooperation is institutional. But when it comes to private preschool institutions, they are self-organized. They have a separate, they have their own association, and hence this makes our cooperation with them easier. So these associations are of utmost importance when the field unites, the institutional work becomes much more efficient and easy, and the cooperation with them becomes more targeted. But of course, we can continue discussing on how we should include them in training programs. I think this is an important issue. When it comes to adult education, it is one of our goals, our directions, and we are actively cooperating with sectoral international organizations, both in terms of having a relevant legislation and programs. I think we have a lot to do with regard to the legislation, and in the law on education, we made relevant amendments which also address the development of means of non-formal education. And these are the main tools for adults. And I want to bring an example from our project. I mean, the formation of our youth centers, which are established in the centers and are financed by the state. We have a separate group which is called youth who do not study or work anywhere. These are one of our most vulnerable groups, because if a person works somewhere and studies somewhere, you are able to involve them in projects through this institutional channel. But if we don't have this youth who do not study or work there, then we should create certain platforms to work with them. And our youth centers are aimed at that, because media literacy, financial literacy, civic education are mandatory components. And already 5 centers have been established. Another 3, we will have another 3 or 4 this year. And of course, this is going to be a continuous effort. And we, not only the Ministry of Education and Science, Culture and Sport deals with adult education, but also other partners. But of course, we need to better coordinate our efforts. If there are reactions, we can listen to the reactions or go for other questions. Thank you very much. Again, speaking about disinformation and your assessments, I would like to mention that Armenia does not live in its bubble, and these extreme evaluations that were provided, I don't agree with them. And in the second place, disinformation is a major issue for almost all the countries in the world, and particularly in developed societies, and it's high on the agenda of the developed societies because media technologies are more developed, and hence this information is spread faster. And this is a global challenge. We are on the same boat with each other, and we should sort of face these issues together. When it comes to increasing the level of media literacy among different segments of the public, I will answer this question from the viewpoint of awareness raising and communication. In our agenda, the promoting media literacy is one of the main points. And when we are doing targeted communication with elderly people, forcibly displaced persons, media literacy, we try to fit media literacy in the overall general package. As Ms. Andreasian said, when working with youth or other target groups, one of the goals of our communication is advancing the importance of advocating for the importance of media literacy and awareness raising. And so it is actually included in our agenda through different packages. If there are questions, let's listen to them. If not, I have mine. So, because we have 15 minutes, I also have one question. We have been speaking about media literacy, strategic communication. So, I'm interested both in the perspective of the government and civil society organizations. Yes, so which are the research studies that help us to diagnose what problems we have? Because we generally view the issues and make judgments based on our own experience. Yes, but are there any research studies that have particularly targeted this issue? Thank you very much for this question. Well, first of all, I will speak from the viewpoint of the reform. When it comes to the reform, a major study was conducted with the participation of all the beneficiaries and stakeholders. Different research tools were used, both online surveys and in-depth interviews, focus group discussions, and both journalists and reform implementers and communication experts and CSOs, their experts were involved. And I can confidently say that the reform is research-based and it's based on the results of the study. We did a needs assessment, and based on this assessment, in combination with the study of international best practice, we have proposed a new system. In this system, we have also integrated the functions that, for objective reasons, have gaps in the public system. Many of our reform are research-based, but they are not put on the institutional foundation, on the institutional rails, and hence when it comes, for instance, in the context of communication reform, we also envisage capacity building in conducting research studies, surveys, in-depth interviews within the public administration system. And also we closely cooperate with our international partners in terms of conducting research. Our international partners send us research studies on different targets. And when it comes, Ms. Andreasian, have there been any research studies on the level of media literacy before inputting the changes that you spoke about? There is a lot of data in our system. The main issue is development of an analytical capacity to analyze this data, because we have an education management information system which includes a lot of data and diverse data, and we are having this digitalization process every year, which allows us to collect more data. And we have the problem with efficiently analyzing this data and putting them at the foundation of our policy. When it comes to research studies, of course, they have been conducted. There have been comprehensive research studies to understand what steps we should take in terms of organizing the education process. And I also, but here I also have to mention that in terms of media literacy, the progress is also apparent in our digitalization process. Every time we make any detail or element digital in our education process, this gives us the opportunity to see what progress we have, and we make the measurement of the progress within the framework of the projects, of separate projects. So at the beginning of the project and at the completion of the project. When it comes to the teachers, we have an annual research which is conducted by the National Center of Education Technology. It refers to teaching skills, use of information technologies and other directions, including media literacy. This is an annual research study which helps us to see the dynamic of change. We also have projects that refer only to the learners. One of our projects, which is called I Am Media Literate, which is a general education project where children of 7th to 12th grades participate. So through this, through the development of the project and through the implementation, we see what skills that children have and how they manifest these skills. And I would also like to ask my last question to Nelly to see the links between media literacy and media environment. You actually gave an interesting example that your Swedish partners were surprised that fake news can actually cope with the media outlets. And could you elaborate on this example a little bit more? Frankly speaking, I don't know what example I brought yesterday, because I just speak, the example comes up to my mind, and then I forget. But when it comes to the topic of media literacy, I want to speak about the important investment and contribution of the Media Initiative Center, because the Media AM team, and Geram is here and is involved in the Media Literacy Week project. So we, the journalists, go to the villages, we meet people, we have meetings at schools, we speak about media literacy, we play games with the children, we teach them how to consume the media in a literate manner. So how to critically analyze what you read. I want to tell a very sad story. In Gyumri, I'm telling this story based on my own experience in Gyumri when I was trying to make jokes and explain media literacy through jokes, because the main target were 7 to 12-year-old male students. So I was trying to use jokes and to explain the concept to them. And then I was looking at a girl. She was looking at me with a very sad glance, but she was very carefully listening to me. And in the end, it resulted as the grandmother of this child approached and then said, "You can't imagine how important this conversation is, because we have major issues with the mental health of my grandchild, because my child believes whatever she reads. And we are not able to explain to her that it doesn't have to be true." And that's why this student was so sad, and she had made a revelation that not all that she reads should be true. And the websites that she was using, there were actually tools that we were teaching them on how to consume the media, how to identify credible sources, credible websites, and she was kind of in a confusion. So she realized that she has to doubt what she reads. And so I think this do no harm principle is very important for the media. We are speaking about regulation, self-regulation, but it's important for the media to be aware of this principle do no harm, because children may have major psychological and mental health issues due to what they read. And so the media should be responsible and should be and display a responsible attitude, approach towards the content they generate and disseminate. I'm just trying to remember what example I brought from Swedish partners. You were telling us that the Swedish partners were surprised when you said how widespread fake news is in Armenia and even competes with the media outlets in Armenia. And you were bringing the example that it's a major problem here. Well, if we link media literacy to self-regulation, so this is the formula when you educate a media literate public, which later formulates demand and also sets out a requirement for the media to be to adhere to the principles of integrity. So it's the consumers that should formulate this demand and be provided to the media. We have not still reached this scheme when our media is so literate that they demand from the media to act within the framework of ethics norms. Thank you very much. The last question, and we will finish.
Let me use my position of being the organizer of this event, Lilit Khazarian from Union of Informed Citizens. As an EUIC member, I would like to know your approach on fact-checking journalism, because do we have media? So we have media outlets which are doing the function of the state in the public discourse. For example, if there is an untrue information voiced by state officials, or if there is manipulation, the media outlets react to them. They try to do it as much as possible, but of course the dissemination is not as much as from the state. So dear Angela, the question is to you. Is anything being done in your body of the strategic within the framework of strategic communication reforms? What is being done by the ministry? So what mechanisms are used to rapidly refute this information, or to confirm this or that information if needed? So and how is it disseminated? We would like to just know it, so that the journalists can also use the press releases or resources provided by you. Thank you very much for the very important question. I will split your question into two components. One is the refutals of disinformation by the state, and second is the establishment of fact-checking by the state. As for the refutals, we strive to improve our monitoring and monitoring capacities. We try to identify the stage after which this disinformation becomes so dangerous that it needs reaction, and in parallel we want to introduce these mechanisms to provide timely and proper information to the public. When I'm speaking about the institutionalization of the process, it is not by chance that I'm using this word. Presently, many of the press secretaries of the ministries, although this refutal is already a reactive function, however, they show proactive approach. However, this requires systemic approach, and no systemic solution has been given to it. And we need to define the stage after which we need to react to this problem. And also, we need to improve the monitoring mechanisms and capacity building, which is high on our agenda. But as for the establishment of a fact-checking school, this issue is under discussion with our partners from civil society, and your opinion is of highest importance. And there is an opinion that fact-checking should not be state-funded, but it should have independent funding. And since we don't have consensus on this regard, there are no practical steps taken on this matter, but they are high on our agenda, and we would appreciate your proposals and observations on this matter. Mr. Razan, I understand why you're asking this question. Not only state agencies, but also the courts are not ready to it. State fact-checking is a new technology, and even the public is not ready for it, Mr. The courts display a traditional approach. They are not yet ready to a new phenomena, to a phenomena of the 21st century, and we need to kind of deflect this approach. We need to focus on new technologies. When there is a new technology coming up, the regulations should be changed. And the decision that was made, we have addressed this matter, and I hope that you will win this court procedure. But we constantly need to revise our legislation when we're dealing with new technologies. So I would want to express my opinion using this opportunity that yes, we constantly need to make corrections in the legislation. But yes, thank you for bringing this your case to the court. Thank you to the speakers and to the audience for their time that they dedicated to this discussion. I have a question to the audience. What do you think? How will today's France-Belgium match will end? What scores? So we are accepting bets.
Dear colleagues, I would like to welcome you at the panel 5, the Armenian Forum for Democracy. Title this year is Democratic Resilience and Human Rights Protection in the Face of Crisis. So this is a very relevant topic for Armenia. How can we have democracy without free media? How can we have government accountability without free media? So we're going to have a discussion on these issues. My name is Stella Merabekian. I'm senior editor at CivilNet. I will moderate this panel discussion titled The Role of Local and International Partners in Armenian Media Development. I would like to present our distinguished speakers. Head of Cooperation Section of the EU Delegation to Armenia, Mr. Frank Hess. National Consultant at Prague Civil Society Center, Mrs. Nuar Tovanisyan. Chairman of the Committee to Protect Freedom of Expression, Mr. Ashat Malikian. And Chief of Party at Internews Armenia, Ms. Corina Chepoy. Dear speakers, before we go to the question and answer session, I would like to ask you to speak for 5 to 7 minutes. I would like to remind you that this panel discussion was made possible with the support of the European Union. Mr. Hess, we will start with you.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everybody. So, and I see that the organizers were smart in trying to avoid the afternoon fatigue after the lunch, but I do not see too many people, so maybe starting at 3 wasn't the very best idea, but let's see whether we can keep you awake. So I haven't seen the rest of the meeting today, so excuse me if I tell you something that you've heard already a couple of times today. I do not know that. So we are proud of being one of the supporters of this event, and that also I hope it shows you that we actually mean when we talk about media, the role of media in democracies or promoting democratization. Now, what are the things that we think are relevant when it comes to media that are functioning well? What are the issues? I start with the first one, which is transparency and accountability. We think that the people that work in the media, they have the role of a watchdog, because you need to check what's happening in the country, what politicians are doing or not doing, what business people are doing or not doing, and your role is really to come up to see are the institutions doing what they're supposed to do, how do they use power, is there any abuse of power, and so on. And if the media do not play their role properly, most of these things will not come out. That brings me to the other aspect of transparency and accountability, which is investigative journalism. And that's something which I think in Armenia still has quite a lot of room for improvement. And what we are trying to do here is also to train you in some of the projects that we have, so that actually journalists are empowered to carry out the research that they need to do, and then that they actually can publish this. So this will also foster a culture of accountability. Second point is, for those that are no journalists in this room, and I don't know, that are simple citizens like me, is about having an informed citizenry. So it's about information dissemination, to the public. So, because this will allow individuals to make more informed decisions. And the second aspect, again, is about education. So beyond the news, the media should and are educating the public on democratic values, human rights, and civic responsibilities. And educational programs and teaching media literacy can enhance the understanding of democratic processes among the population. Third point I want to make here is media serve as a platform for public discourse. So public debate happens usually mostly in the media, not only there, but it's an essential space where this can happen. And it hopefully encourages a healthy discourse and helps to shape public opinion. And since this issue of today's event is also about human rights, I think media also need to give a voice to those that have no voice or little voice in public. So those that are basically the victims of human rights, I think it's the duty and the privilege of the media to talk about these events and to make them public so that those that have no voice can actually get one. First point I wanted to mention is to facilitate electoral and fact-checking initiatives. So it's about coverage of elections in a particular country and the surroundings, critical coverage, educating the public about this. And it's also very much so about fact-checking, because especially when in pre-period elections in any country, so Armenia is no exception to that, politicians sometimes have a tendency to play a little bit with the truth in order to make their point, in order to get votes from the voters. So fact-checking is part of accurate information. And I have my colleague here, Narina. Part of her job is actually to do also fact-checking when it comes to disinformation. And disinformation, they have to say, unfortunately, Armenia is relatively high, not necessarily by only local media, but also from other countries that have an interest to promote their vision here. And part of her job then is to see really what's happening and to fight this disinformation that we are all exposed to. Final point, promoting government policies and reforms. That's also what we do in the EU. We have been supporting, for instance, the government now in their new campaign on strategic communication. That doesn't mean that we agree with everything that the government does and says, but we try to help them to make their point in a better way, and that they actually reach out to the public and make their points. So this is also about policy analysis, and also when we are talking about promoting of reforms, it's very much about empowering civil society to provide critical feedback to the reforms, to what's happening in the country. I think I'll stop here.
Thank you, Mr. Hess. Corina Chapoy, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. I'd like to get back to the topic of the panel and talk about the role of the donors in media development, and specifically here in Armenia. We do think we provide with support to the media here, and not only that, but also the development of other spheres that are related to the topic. We do support media development, media literacy, and other services provided to the media. And I think it's very important to look into the strategic plans of each media outlet that can and has a vision and can develop ahead to inform better the public here. No donor ever would be able to completely support a media outlet or many of them long-term, regretfully. That is why we're trying to support, and I think it would be the role of the donors to support those plans and visions that the media would have. That is important because, today we're here, but tomorrow we might not. We just talked about the shaky political environment, the global one that we have. We're seeing what's happening in the United States, and we're seeing what's happening in Europe, and we do not know exactly how much longer media here or in other developing countries would be able to be supported by donors. So the better a media outlet is managed, the better its organized, connected to its audience, financially managed, the easier would be for any media outlet to go through more difficult times or more limited resources. And we understand that it's very difficult in a country that very often goes through crisis to have a sufficient media environment. And we just heard our colleague earlier who said that the advertising market is very narrow. And we know that it's very small, as well as the audiences are quite limited in the ways they can support the media they like, the balanced media, the professional media. So the challenges are big, and we're here to support media and our partners in what they do through various means. You know, we have here one of our associate partners supporting media in terms of legal assistance, both in terms in court and consultations. We have partners that provide legal reform support, psychological support. We have also a partner that deals with self-regulation and supports that process, which again, we've heard as a very important instrument in fighting disinformation. And another important element in our project is providing media with research. Very soon, in a month or maximum 2, would have another research. That is the second one, focused on media, how the media is consumed, and also freedom of expression issues. So that one will be posted online, again in English and Armenian. And I hope that this type of research, as well as other type of research that is done by our partners on media market, will be helping the media to develop. I think that's essential. Aside from that, there are, of course, thematic gaps that might be not the most popular, and I think you mentioned that. Themes that sometimes are related to minorities or themes that are not fully covered, those are gaps that, again, can be supported by donors and by international organizations. But again, we have to think what's lying ahead. In some countries, such thematic, narrow focus is supported by the state. They support children's publication, they support minority media, they support cultural media. That might be a solution, maybe. We're also working on a local potential fund for the media to be here after we leave, after maybe the donor's mandate is finished. So I think these are some elements where donors can work actively and cooperate, of course, and also support the development of the media this way.
Thank you. Պարոն Մելիքյան, խնդրեմ, 5-ից 7 րոպե։
Շնորհակալություն։ Նախորդ պանելում արդեն իսկ որոշ առումով շոշափեցին այն խնդիրները, որոնք որ կապված են
related to freedom of expression were touched upon about the challenges of the media outlets. So I would like to build up on that, especially given the fact that today the topic of this panel is exactly that. The most global challenge at the moment is one of the pillars of democracy, which is the attempts of devaluation of this pillar, which is the freedom of expression, and many international organizations outline this phenomenon. And if we speak about the Armenian reality, then very often they say that this fake news, disinformation, hate speech, doesn't this constitute the freedom of speech? Of course, we have to answer this question and say that no, freedom of expression probably is accompanied by such phenomena, by the media trash. It runs in parallel with freedom of expression, but freedom of expression is about the responsible speech. And if we speak about the media activities, it is about the professional speech. And this is the reason that after many attempts, a number of media outlets decided that in order to proportionally counteract the challenges, we need to coordinate the work on the self-regulation of the media and to activate and to increase the level of media literacy of the public, because nothing else can be done without harming the freedom of expression. So the administrative resources that can be used, the mechanisms that can be used, maybe for honest purposes, and although sometimes they are used for dishonest purposes, however, they cannot but harm the freedom of expression, and it is more risky than the other phenomena if we have an idea about combating such phenomena, then in case of such strict restrictions, it will fail. So the Committee of Freedom of Expression has been monitoring the situation of freedom of expression, the rights of the journalists. For 20 years, it has been recording the violations and issuing reports, which is used by the public and by international organizations, including Freedom House. They make references to our reports. The Human Rights Watch makes references to our reports, the Journalists Without Borders, State Department. So we try not to omit any fact regarding the violations of the journalists' rights, but on the other hand, we cannot but record the polarization in the media field, the lawlessness in the all permissibility in the media field, which devaluates the media sector proper and the profession of journalism, and it undermines the trust of the public. And of course, these are the main challenges which we need to overcome. And when we say that self-regulation is a tool which may contribute to the recuperation of the field, we mean that, of course, in terms of legislation, there might be no restrictions, but when the media outlet assumes certain responsibilities and obligations, it must fulfill them, and in case of failure to fulfill them, it must be suspended, and they should lose their trust. Unfortunately, we don't have such an environment formulated where the media outlet may serve as a business and independently solve its issues. But we need to put up with the situation that the media outlets are so polarized and segregated in terms of political views, and they mainly pursue the political interest rather than the public interest. However, we need to tell one thing to our journalist colleagues of, okay, we might say that you are serving some political interest, which is far from the professional journalism. But if there are some objective conditions, at least you should assume the responsibility to do fact-checking, to combine various opinions so that your audience can familiarize with other perspectives as well. Otherwise, now I'm speaking about media literacy. Each individual has to start checking your work from various sources. They need to decide whether to trust or not trust this or that media outlet. So why should the reader do the functions of the media outlet? I don't want to abuse your time, and I think that during the discussion, during the question and answer session, I will elaborate on other aspects, but I would like to conclude with an example. So during the last panel, they were speaking about the example which was interesting for the Swedish partners, but I would like to bring another concrete example. When I was in Sweden, I met with their media ombudsman, from whom we learned that media ombudsman has a great way and if he sees that there are some violations of ethical norms, they can impose penalties. And then we met with a journalist from a barometer regional newspaper, with an investigative journalist from there. We had a lengthy discussion, and he told an incident where the media ombudsman had found a violation of ethical norms in their content, and he had imposed a penalty of 15,000 euros. But this journalist was saying, I don't care about this 15,000 euros, but it was a shame for us that we had violated ethical norms, and the media ombudsman noticed that. And here we are speaking about the Institute of Shame, which is and in our media environment, we unfortunately witness ridicule of the word shame. This word shame is neglected, and I think that we will have room for discussion of this matter further. So, yes, thank you, Mr. Melikan. Ms. Ravanisan. Please, the floor is yours. Thank you. Dear Stella, we had the opportunity to cooperate as journalists, and now we cooperate. I have cooperation with you as the head of Prague Center, and I can notice that the main issue of the civil society is the financial sustainability. And in our organization, we try to address this issue by providing the media outlets with institutional support. And our peculiarity is probably that we give an opportunity to the media outlets to analyze their priorities, to determine their needs, and to address them, unlike many other cases of project funding, which are mainly addressed at the content creation. But as it was mentioned by my senior colleague Corina, we understand that the funds of the donors are not endless, and they are subject, given the last changes of the world order, they have reduced. So we encourage all the organizations and media outlets we work with to create their own sources of funding, be it advertisement, crowdfunding, or providing services. And as my other senior colleague, Mr. Melikan, mentioned, unfortunately, in Armenia, media is not established as a business. So the work with the public on this matter is very weak. So we try to target the audience and to engage the public. And for us, the priorities are the media outlets who know their audiences, target audience, and they have a direct impact on their target audience. And it is clear, and as Mr. Melikan mentioned, it is clear that independent media have less funding and receive less funding than politically affiliated media. And in this regard, considering what is happening across the world, it is a priority for us to fund and support independent media in Armenia. Thank you, Neva. Thank you, dear speakers. You identified all the challenges and problems that are present in our media field, and I can attest to it. Indeed, the independent media are surviving, are fighting for survival, and they are forced to choose between editorial independence or financial independence. I would like to touch upon Mr. Melikan's point about polarization of the media field. Who would like to address this topic on voluntary basis? Do you think it is an Armenian disease typical only to the Armenian environment, or it is a global issue? And what are the pathways to address these challenges? As the reports of Zinc Network and the Journalists Without Borders testify, this polarization reflects the polarization in the political field. Ms. Corina? Kaya?
Գիտեք, հիմնականում
Yeah, and this way they managed to not give access to the country or accreditation or to the events in terms of propaganda media, foreign propaganda especially. So I think having professional media and proper definition for media would help in any case, but it's not a typical Armenian problem. As I gave the example, it's from the Baltics, but there are other examples as well. And you see at the EU level, there were some media outlets that were blocked because it's very difficult to call them media, honestly. If that is pure propaganda that is based on falsehoods, is that media? So we have to look ourselves into the field and think about it, because the protections media gets, professional media, does it have to be extended to propaganda or disinformation outlets? So we have to really think carefully about this. And of course, be careful not to infringe on freedom of expression. But I would definitely agree that taking into account the challenges in general for the media, the proliferation and the fragmentation of audience and how difficult it is for media now to survive. It's really a valid question, I think, to define what is media, who is a journalist these days. And this way also I can connect to the project of MEO and the Yerevan Press Club that is working on a whitelist model where you can recommend certain media. Because often when we go to especially outside of capitals, people ask us, so whom do we trust? So where do we get the information? Having a self-regulatory body actually analyze what is trustworthy media or professional media would also help.
Thank you. Պարոն Մելիքյան, ցանկանում եք որևէ բան հավելել։ Միանգամից երկրորդ հարցը հնչեցնեմ։ 20 տարվա մեդիա մոնիտորինգի մասին նշեցիք։ Կարող ենք պայմանականորեն բաժանել, թե ինչպես են փոխվել խնդիրները մինչև 2018 թվականը, ինչ խնդիրներ էին եւ 18 թվականից հետո։
Դա հետաքրքիր հարց է իհարկե։ Ես երբեք չէի ասի, որ բևեռացումը սկսվեց 18 թվականից։ Այդ երևույթը կար եւ կար միգուցե մի քիչ ավելի մեղմ քան 18 թվականից հետո եւ դա պետք է ես կապում եմ քաղաքական բևեռացման հետ, ինչպես նաեւ հասարակության մեջ տեղի ունեցած բևեռացման հետ։ Բնականաբար մամուլն որպես հայելի այդ ամենը։
Polarization in the public, and the press is just a mirror, and it was mirrored also in the press. And the media that were serving certain political interests, they remained at the hands of the same powers, and the new authorities, they started to find their place in the new media environment and to position themselves in the new environment. Of course, it's not only typical to Armenia, but there are different levels of polarization. Polarization may be an obstacle to the media field and to the healthy state of the public, but it may not have a major impact. This is also a possibility. When we are speaking about Armenia, the peculiarity of Armenia is that our public is a witness or a victim of internal media wars, when media of the one camp try to destroy the other camp by all possible means and vice versa. And so there are a few such similar camps. And very often you can read an article in the media and see that only the owner of the media will understand it, and also the target and the addressee. So it has no public significance, and the public plays no role there. So it's only between these two camps. And it's such a major issue that, you just used the following phrase, independent media. Well, as a media expert, I will oppose to the use of this phrase. I would like to say that we either do not have independent media, or we can just count it on one hand. And I am for another term, which is high quality media, high quality journalism, and the media who use the funding of the international media. These are the high quality media outlets which they do not depend on political forces. Of course, these media are not independent as well, but they advocate for high quality journalism, and they they do publish different opinions, they do fact-checking activities, they as a rule, do not have any covert advertisement and propaganda, etc. And it's these media that join the self-regulation process and have a certain role in this process. So there's more than 80 media outlets. Among these media outlets, we have platforms that violate the ethics rules under which they have signed. But because sometimes there are no complaints, they do not become a matter of discussion in the body. But we do know that very often among these media outlets, there are a number of media, I will not give names now, which I do not trust at all. I simply do not trust them. Although as a media expert, I should follow their activity, but as a consumer, I don't trust them. And there are people who say, I do not watch public TV. I do not watch like 5TV, which is an opposition media, but I do watch them because that's what my job is about. But by following these media outlets, I can say that there are dozens of media who I do not trust in any way. I am sad to say that. Very often I read an article, I laugh at that because it's a manipulated analysis, but it's not. You shouldn't laugh about it. It's really very sad, and it's a reality that our society faces every day. I would like to address my next question to Mr. Hess. Mr. Hess, by supporting the media sector in Armenia, what new priorities has the EU set for this sector? And as Melikan said, does the EU support independent media or high quality journalism?
Well, on the previous question, from my perspective, which is more of a global citizen, I see that in many countries, in particular in Europe, the media are indeed getting more polarized. But I think polarization of the media is not a problem as such. The issue is, as was said before, is also about quality or having not quality. If it's well argued, I have no problem with a polemic article. But also it should be clear what are facts and what are opinions. And in many countries, we do not have polarized media because there we only have basically the media that listen to what the government says and repeat whatever it is. And that's much worse than what we have in Armenia. So I think it's actually not so bad that we have the situation in which we are. The problem is, of course, where do you get your information from? And just one comment on psychology. I mean, everybody who studies psychology knows that we tend to look for media that confirm the opinions that we already have. So how do we deal with this? What I, for instance, try to do, I have a certain political view, and from time to time I read what the opposite side says, just to challenge myself a little bit. But what I also notice, I do it less and less, and that's not good. So, but coming to your question, so one thing that we have been trying to do with a project that we had with Deutsche Welle is actually to support the media to come up with a sustainable business model, because that's a major challenge in Armenia. How can you produce quality journalism, whether it's independent or quality, doesn't really matter so much in my view, but you have to be able to make a living out of it. And that's what we have been trying to do. So we taught them about how to set up a business plan, how to set up a company. And we hope that that at least has shown some results. What we also, of course, try to do is we try to professionalize the work that journalism do in this country. And there is also a risk in what we do, because and many of the organizations come to us and say, look, we need some funding because we're independent, we need it. But then they will depend on us, and that's also not good, because then they may be reluctant to speak out against us in public. And again, I mean, I have no problem if we are being criticized, but it should be done in a professional way. And if we are challenged, that's fine. So how to deal with this? I do not know, but we have a number of projects. I think what was said by you, for instance, having a whitelist is a good idea. Making this distinction between high quality journalism, as long as it's clear that it's not necessarily independent, and the self-regulation of the media.
Thank you, Mr. Hess. Եթե ճիշտ եմ հասկանում, հիմնական
And it's right. My main conclusion is that the media can not only rely on donors, even if they get institutional support, they should transform and adopt business models to become more self-sufficient. But the research shows that Armenian audiences do not have any intention to pay for content, even if they like the content, even if it creates added value and they consider it high quality. So what solutions will you suggest, Mrs. Corina, in this respect?
That's not the only way of being self-sustainable, of course. It's not only through the audience support, but also how do you approach the audience? You don't go there and say, give me your money, right? We know, and we've heard from the media actually telling us that they even feel guilty to go to the media, audience, and ask for the money, because many of the audience members could be financially in difficulty, or not having that extra cash that they would consider giving to someone else. Let's say a charitable foundation, or a kids or a refugee issue. So aside from that, I think it's very important to offer to the audience what they need, and to also compare what they spend on and how they could support the media. We had, for example, campaigns in other countries where they would actually suggest just giving a coffee a day to the media. The cost of the coffee, it's something we all, especially here in Armenia, I noticed, we can afford, right? So that's something, if that goes to the media, that's really not an issue, or not a problem, or not a major one. And then relying on more people, that's a solution. Then also is offering to the audience what they want. How many media outlets here actually ask their audience, what do you want from us in terms of information? I really doubt that this is really being addressed, and there is this direct link between the media outlet and their audience. There are also other ways of attracting your audience. We have examples when media would organize events, unique events for their audience, where they would be invited and to support the media, but also to create this connection with the audience. Other sources of funding we've seen are merchandise. If you're a brand, let's say CivilNet, people want to wear your T-shirt with your name, maybe, a mug, or any other products that you could actually sell to your audience. And there are many other ways of looking for other resources. We don't say that this will cover all your costs. That's impossible nowadays. Media outlets have to rely on several ways of surviving. But some that already mentioned here, like services, we've seen here being done, special publications we've seen here being done. So some things are possible, not all of them, but at least when we see media outlets trying to connect to their audiences and at the same time getting more support from them, because be it US or Europe, again, I was saying political winds are very changeable, so there might be less support from international resources.
So
in the
you
future.
appreciate the efforts by the media.
Of course, whatever that would be, but we see some good numbers in some cases when media, and here, for example, again, CivilNet is one example, try to work with the diaspora sources. Why not? One of the resources can be that.
Thank you. Նվարդ բիզնես մոդելների, հաջող բիզնես մոդելների մասին ինչ կարող ես մեզ պատմել, ինչ փորձեր են արվում, ինչ փորձեր են բերվում Հայաստան, որտեղ ակնհայտ է, որ այս ոլորտում
In
հայաստանյան մեդիան
Armenia, because it is obvious that the Armenian media really needs Western best practice.
I didn't deal with the studies of the business models, but based on my interaction and communication with the media and their leaders, I can surely say that there are media outlets, for example, who can generate funds by service provision, which they can channel to the coverage of their other departments. And another factor, as Corina mentioned, is the direct interaction with the public, so to form a very loyal community. And in that case, I think the possibility that people will feel a part of this community will create more opportunities for receiving more financial support. You mentioned that the studies usually show that people are not ready to pay for media content, but the same studies of Zinc, I think, do show that they are willing to pay some funds if it is not big amount, for example, 2,000 to 5,000 drums per month. They are ready to pay to the papers in order to receive verified information. So this much on my part. Mr. Hess has something to add, please.
Yeah, I have a degree in business, so I want to make the case for business model. And in addition to what was said, I mean, there are two major things where media can make money. One is advertising, yeah, and that has to be done aggressively. And the other thing is what people often do not think about is, okay, you can use media for which you do not pay, but you pay with the data, and the data are being sold. So, and if that is made clear by the media to the user, okay, this is, you have this choice, you don't pay anything, but you will get advertisement and your data will be sold, or you pay a certain amount of money and then your data will be kept free. Then I think a number of people hopefully will go for the second option.
Thank you, Mr. Hess. Պարոն Մելիքյան, կարծես
Պարոն Մելիքյան, dear Mr. Melikian, it seems you have something to add. In general, the monetization of the journalism requires professional approach, and many just even media managers who master the knowledge of the field, the selection of the topics, coverage, etc. All of this requires a lot of expertise if you are considering it as a business model. It was 5 years ago when a conference took place on this topic in Tbilisi, and I saw how it can be applied as science and receive quite big dividends, even based on the Swedish practice, which we were studying, the Barometer newspaper, and it had 185,000 subscribers. And when we asked them, how did you achieve this? They said step by step. Well, first, we gave it out for free, and then we raised the quality. We studied the needs of the audience. Also, we determined from which category how much amount can be expected. So the free subscription was provided to only those who were above 100 years of age, and they had 15 such subscribers. But it was such a quality news media for which it was worth paying. And when we're speaking about financial sustainability, the dozens of media outlets who do not inspire trust to me, not only because they do not publish what I want to see, but because they publish low quality content, and journalism is absent from there. And so these platforms, these editorial houses have financial sustainability. They receive sustainable funding from political forces, and even they're not even interested in the donors' funds, because the donors cannot cover all their costs, first of all, and they need to work with the donors, but they are used to working in other conditions. And this is a different reporting to which they are not ready to commit. So when we're speaking about financially unsustainable editorial houses, we need to consider that these are the editorial houses who are not benefiting from political funds. And they mainly rely on the international donors. So this is a very subtle issue, and the donors need to pay attention, need to carefully study and analyze who they are funding in general. And on the other hand, we, the media experts, need to understand what can we expect from this media sector in general, and with whom we should work, who would be interested in our self-regulation process, who would like to be in this white list, because I have been working on this idea as well for a long time. I can say that there are criteria here as well. You cannot appear in this list unless you apply any mechanism of self-regulation. Unless you observe professional ethics, you cannot be a part of this list if you are hiding your beneficial owner and your financial sources. You cannot be in this list if you are not observing the law and you are not publishing the output material. So, by the way, the project that Ms. Corina is leading, there has been a sub-grant, and we have been providing free legal counseling to the journalists, and we are protecting the rights of the journalists in the courts. But here we are guided by the same criteria. If this media, a couple of criteria were added to this, which would have a positive impact on the court system and on the public perception. But when we were discussing how we should motivate the journalists to participate in self-regulation during the last panel, I'm saying that year by year, these incentives will increase. If you participate in self-regulation, you can use our protection, our advocacy in court proceedings for free. So if you can benefit from other other forms of support, and we will think about other incentives. This legislative initiative is underway, and I would like to say that we are not we haven't adopted a compulsory we're not trying to forcibly engage the media outlets, but to incentivize them to engage with us. And it saves us, protects us from the criticism that we are selective and we want to work only with the media who receive funding from international donors. No, it's not the case. And I have put up with this polarization, but I just say that even if you are pursuing certain political interests, please be kind to observe the ethical norms as much as possible in parallel. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Melikian. So my last question seems not to have direct relation to Armenia. But considering that the regional countries are closely interlinked and whatever happens in one country are reflected and affect the other countries, and taking the opportunity that we have international partners present here, I would like to ask, what do you think about the law on foreign agents adopted in Georgia? Do you see similar risks in Armenia? Because sometimes we hear this opinion that it can come to Armenia as well. So what strategy should be developed, and how would it will it reflect? Will it affect us? So, on voluntary basis, who would like to speak up?
Okay, before I answer, thank you. Let me just say I'm not in charge of Georgia, so what I say reflects my view from here. Well, you've seen what has happened in Georgia so far. I think it's relatively clear that the Georgian government, for whatever reason, took inspiration from what has happened in Russia. And in Russia, there is basically no more free media since then. And I think it was part of a plan to basically stop any opposition inside Russia. So in Georgia, when the government announced its plans to do that, the EU has taken first an attempt to reason with the government and has voiced its concerns. There have been a number of discussions. In parallel, civil society in Georgia has gone to the streets very, very markedly because the concern that we all have is that if this law is implemented in a way that we are afraid of, that would mean that the voice of opposition would be much more difficult, and of independent media would be stronger, or would be more difficult to hear. The government has proceeded with the adoption of the law. The president opposed, put a veto into it, but then it was passed in parliament. What's the outcome? Basically, the enlargement process with Georgia has been put on hold. I don't know what's going to happen next. Again, I'm not working on Georgia, but it definitely has made the whole situation for Georgia and for the Georgian people more difficult. Now, was it worthwhile to stop or to at least pause the accession process for this issue of the media? I don't know. It's up to the Georgian people and to the Georgian government to decide. I hope we would not come to such a situation here in Armenia, and I don't see it happening anytime soon. I think I hope it will be a reminder also for the Armenian people that when we in the EU talk about media, we are serious. Media, freedom of media, and also when it comes to the actions of civil society in a country, whether they are financed partially, to some extent, or fully, or not at all from foreign countries, doesn't really matter that much. I mean, We expect that civil society should act freely in any country, and but I don't think that this is anywhere on the agenda of the current Armenian government.
Thank you. Խնդրեմ պարոն Մելիքյան։
Խնդրեմ։
I think that the law that was adopted in Georgia is a consequence. Not that this process started with the adoption of that law. The Georgia was taking regressive steps, and from the democracy it had actually achieved. And this law was just a consequence of that process. And it's important for the civil society to be cautious and to carefully study the process that led to this situation. Is there a similar risk for Armenia? Well, we cannot rule out such a risk, but it will depend on who will come to power, what forces will come to power, what policy they will pursue, and particularly with Russia, where this foreign agent law has been enforced for many years. And I am convinced that in our society, there will be a struggle not to allow such forces to come to power until the end. So today's authorities are saying that times when when election bribes were given in Armenia, and elections were won, have passed, but it's not an absolute truth, because if you allow distributing election bribes in Armenia, as soon as you do that, one of the former presidents of Armenia we may come back to power because by distributing bribes to poor families. So if such developments take place in Armenia and if a person comes to power who is ready to make turn Armenia into a Russian oblast, then this might happen, but I don't think there is a direct threat. If there is no direct threat, it doesn't mean that we should relax, because previously the former ambassador of Russia was overtly saying that Armenia should also adopt such a foreign agents law, and they are now welcoming the law that has been adopted in Georgia. The current ambassador is also actively speaking about that. Of course, they do understand that in case of this current authorities, such developments are not possible. But the former ambassador was talking with an open text. And if they did not receive if they did not see the resistance of the civil society, I remember what major resistance there was by the civil society against such discourse. So they just realized back then that it was not still time to pass such a law in Armenia. And I'm really very happy that the representative of the EU does not see such a risk, but it doesn't mean that we should relax and we shouldn't remain cautious and to fight for against any such possibility. And by wrapping up, I want to wrap up this main part of the panel discussion, and then we will go for a question and answer session. I just will have one comment with regard to what Mr. Melikian said. So it seems that the civil society in Armenia, as recent developments show, is not united. we saw different statements by different civil society groups with regard to what happened in front of the National Assembly, and their statements were quite different from each other. And now we will take questions from the audience. Thank you very much. In the first place, I would like to thank you for this panel discussion, both the moderator and the speakers, because there are discussions when you just are looking at your watch and waiting for when it will finally be over. But this was one of the discussions where I didn't want to end. And during this discussion, I think that all the speakers raised the issues that are really very relevant and important in today's media environment. And when I was speaking at the previous discussion about poverty and illiterate society, I can actually reiterate this because it's due to the poverty in the country that many media outlets and many journalists, of course, I don't want to offend anyone, but they kind of sell themselves and they pass from hand to hand. They are wonderful experts in the field, but because of financial issues, they have to do that. The second reason, and please could you formulate your question if possible? You know what the problem is? We're speaking about monetization and we're discussing on how media can earn money. Monetization through YouTube or social media. That for Armenia, it's impossible. Monetization is impossible. Second, if you give good content, if you provide human stories, if you have fact-checked content, the public doesn't really need it. It has to contain certain swear words. It has to contain defamation so that the people are appealed to open and read it. When it comes to selling content or services, I think maybe Mr. Melikian knows what path we have taken. We have tried everything. We had the first ombudsman, we had this first subscription cases, we attempted to sell the content, and so on and so forth. It is very difficult. Because I think I would call us, it is very difficult for you if you're an independent media outlet. I will call ourselves independent. And I have a request and proposal to our speakers. In our reality, I mean the Armenian environment, the small percentage of media in Armenia that are independent or try to create high quality content. So at least for 3 years, this media need to be supported, if I can call that so. They should be financially supported for at least some 3 years so that they can stand firmly on their feet. And maybe after that, they will already figure out on how to become more self-sufficient. Thank you very much. Mrs. Corina wants to respond. Իրականում դուք շատ կարևոր խնդրի մասին խոսեցիք,
In Armenia, it's a painful one that we work since we opened the office here, but I'm sure our partners work forever on this. And it's an issue also of monetization of Armenian language, which is a problem. And we actually have one partner that is dedicated to that. Media Development, Media Diversity Institute, MDI, and Artur Papian, you know him all, I'm sure. Please talk to him. We'll try to resolve it also through our colleagues at headquarters. But I'm sure any diplomatic support would be actually perfect to take the issue up to big tech companies because they often overlook small markets. And Armenia is a small market with a unique language. This combination is not very good for the sustainability of the media, because monetizing on YouTube or other platforms would actually at least cover some of the needs of the media. So that's something to work on for all of us. And I think even we can involve the government of Armenia. I think it would be a strategic issue also for Armenia as a country. And the other issue in terms of complete support for 3 years, let's say, and then let's see what happens. Actually, this was tried. It doesn't happen, regretfully. When the money ends, everything ends. Because unless this is supported by painful reforms, and it's very difficult for anyone to reform. For myself personally, it's difficult to reform. And jokes aside, I mean, reforming something or changing something, it's very difficult. But we're here to support those changes, and hopefully in the 4 years remaining for us, or the other years of, I know, the EU project that just started, it's also a longer term project, which is great, I think. I hope that these efforts of longer term support will help you become more more sustainable. I'm not talking about complete sustainability. We know it's very difficult. It's a small market, and advertising was mentioned. That also is a limited venue because there is not so much of it. So, and we talked about impoverished population. So it's difficult, but we'll be here to help.
So one of the problems is to overcome the reluctance of self-reform.
As well. This is one of the factors.
Yeah.
But as you see, we just named many, and I think we have to work on all these issues with the help of our partners. As I was mentioning, we provide psychological support, legal reform, self-regulation, media literacy, training support. So all of this, I hope, really, it will help.
Thank you so much. Հարց խնդրեմ
օգտակար կլինեն. Navart will react. Thank you very much. I partially agree with what Karine said. Well, one major businessman was saying that for a major businessman, there is no small market. And for largely it is true. Imagine that Coca-Cola says, well, Armenia is too small. 2 million market is too small, so Coca-Cola will not go there, or Procter & Gamble's will not go there. So even in a small market, you can monetize, and it's not a coincidence that Corinne actually suggested that you turn to Artur Papian. Of course, it's not the only path. You should think of what you can produce and sell. And in the end, and I will repeat myself, in Sweden, we were actually speaking with a partner and said that they also took this reform step by step. Not that you do anything lump sum. Yes, it's because every business is like that. You find the paths which will make you appealing to supporters and donors. And I also do not agree with what was said by you at the previous panel, where you said that we have widespread poverty. Well, you know, when our foreign partners come to Armenia, they say, you know, we had the impression you are a poor country, but I don't see such expensive cars in our country. And we were 15 days in Slovenia, and we didn't see this many expensive cars. Can you see what's happening in the cafes, in nightclubs, gambling, etc., bets, etc.? Of course, it's I don't say that there is no poverty, but it's an indicator of the values and qualities of the society, and we should work at those values, because it's a small segment of the society, and we do have official data on how much poverty we have in Armenia. But I want to again remember Sweden's experience. They showed how they explained to us how they started to work in this regard. We should become Sweden. We should start working towards becoming Sweden, because one of the MPs was saying we're not Sweden to adopt such laws. But no, I don't agree with that. We should take steps. We should adopt laws like they have in Sweden. Should we compare ourselves with Sweden, or should we compare ourselves with Iran and Turkey? Should we suffice ourselves by being ranked better than Turkey and Iran, or should we try to approximate our progress to developed countries? And hence, I think we should move towards, for instance, what Sweden has achieved. And the editor of the Swedish media was saying how much money they started to earn by covering women's issues, because they said that they know that in a Swedish family, the money is at the hands of the wife. So the man takes the money and gives it to a wife, and then the wife decides that she wants to pay 15 kronas to give a newspaper on a monthly basis. Noart also has a reaction. I just wanted to add that our center has provided grants numerous times to the same organizations. We try to help these organizations to stand firmly on their feet. But of course, this is not a guarantee that they will have the monetization that would allow for covering your expenses, at least to some extent. So that's why it is important for the media to start, whenever they start their activities, to think how they can earn income. My name is Lilith Razarian. I have a question with regard to the community media, regional media, and their financing. So we have very few so-called community media, and they are quite, these internal issues in the communities are quite ignored by our media. So do our donors try to address this issue with, I don't know, projects or other means? We have been concerned about this issue for quite a long time, because everything is centralized in Yerevan, and because the media are mostly active politically. That's why everything is taking place in Yerevan. So it's not the case only with the media, but everything is centralized in Yerevan. Yes, you're right. But particularly media are centralized in Yerevan, because we have a number of regional issues, including security issues. We have bordering communities which face their peculiar issues, have unique issues, and these issues are ignored. We talked a lot about poverty, but of course, I will have to reiterate that the media do not have enough funds to have paid workers to kind of extend their activity to the regions as well. So what projects there are, what perspectives there are in this respect?
Yes,
visiting the local media. It's not as hopeless as you can think, by the way. What I was surprised to see that in various places, media outlets find different ways of addressing their problems. And they exist. That's the most important thing. Media outlets in communities that address their community problems. They're close to their community. Everyone knows them. It's very different relationship from in comparison with national media. I mean, who knows the journalists, how they look like, and their neighbor, for example. And there it's like that. And what we've discovered is, first of all, some media outlets own their space, which is like halfway there for sustainability. Others have service providing deals or contracts, even with a local government, which is okay, as long as it's marked properly. Others have a combination of NGO and media status, and they converge and this way support these identities together. So it's not all hopeless, and we're trying to support local media. We might not do it enough. We have already had that type of criticism from our partners locally, and we agree with that. We should do more for the local media, and we definitely. Something else we've discovered is very different when you go to the people and see the situation, and also what you get on paper or even from talking to people. The impression and the conditions you see, it's uncomparable. In one case, for example, we visited the radio station to only discover that they actually have a multimedia production and they never had support from donors, but they come up with a project and then they look for a sponsor. Let's say a health program, and then they look for health-related sponsors and so on. So, and they are viable, but they never presented themselves such. They say, you didn't support us, but their project would say, we're a radio station, which is not true, actually. In reality, they are a multimedia production facility that is doing quite well. So examples like that exist, thank God. But we should do more for them, I agree with you.
Մի արձագանք կարելի է մի բան։
Շատ կարճ խնդրեմ, որ ժամանակ ունեմ մյուս հարցերի։
Հա, ես ուղղակի
I would just like to reflect, to sum up the answer. So, in fact, we have a problem of capacity building and training of the local media in the communities. Do I understand your opinion right? This is what I take from your answer. If this is the case, so we should aim at improving their capacities.
They need training and they ask for training. Every time we went there, there are already relationships in terms of training with the media outlets, be it on the spot or here in Yerevan. We have a partner media initiative center, and they do provide training, including to local media. But also, there are efforts made also to provide training on the spot. Actually, we met there, right?
Thank you. Yes, please, Nvart.
Շարունակեմ Կորինային, ես կուզեի ասել, որ մեր կազմակերպությունը չունի որևէ այսպես ասած դիրքորոշում ֆինանսավորելու միայն մայրաքաղաքային լրատվամիջոցներին ու մենք մեծ սիրով, մեծ պատրաստակամությամբ ֆինանսավորում ենք նաև մարզային լրատվամիջոցներին, եթե իրանք ունեն հստակ ռազմավարություն կամ պատրաստ են մշակել այդ ռազմավարությունը ու ունեն լսարանի վրա հստակ ազդեցություն, աշխատում են իրենց լսարանի հետ։
Շնորհակալ եմ, պարոն Մելիքյան, կարճ։
Դե քանի որ մեր կազմակերպությունը բավականին մեծ փորձ ունի մեր մարզային գործընկերների հետ համագործակցելու, ես շատ լավ հասկանում եմ իրենց կարիքները, ավելին ես իրենց աշխատանքը ավելի եմ գնահատում, որովհետև մայրաքաղաքում շատ ավելի հեշտ է վարչապետին ու նախագահին քննադատել, քան այնտեղ ինչ-որ մի խանութ բան։ Եվ ունի իր սպეციფიკան առհասարակ.
Because it has its peculiarities, the regional work has its peculiarities, and the fact that the support should be activated further is undoubted, is without doubt. And I would like to call on our partners to pay special attention to the regional media. And I would like to add also that it was quite interesting that recently the Embassy of Canada had a call for a project which was exclusively for the regions, for the regional media, for not only media, but the civil society. And this call was for media, for civil society, and today was the deadline, and everybody was supposed to submit their proposals, and we also submitted our proposal, and we plan to have training courses for journalists in the regions and for the media in the regions on increasing the legal consciousness, legal literacy, especially on defamation, offenses, hate speech, and we will have training courses in all the 10 regions, and we will try within this framework of these trainings to include other aspects of their professional activity, to hold discussions on these aspects, because I hope that since our trainers are very experienced and very well known and they can convey very useful things, I hope that it will be useful for them. But this is just an example which can be just a drop in the ocean. But that's why both the civil society, which is based in Yerevan, and the donors need to pay special attention to the regions, and not only in our sector. Truly, Armenia is like this creature with a big head and small body. I'm sorry, Mr. Hess, for not giving you the floor. Please, you can comment. Present your question.
Թե չեմ սխալվում, ձեր հարցի պատասխաններն են հնչում։
Thank you for the question on the role of regional media. Now, in our development cooperation, we work throughout the country, in particular in the northern Mazis, but also in Sunik. So we have that aspect. And whenever we have a project in whichever region, we engage with the local media because we want to also get the news out there. But I very much take your point that we also have to strengthen the regional media more in a more systematic fashion. And I'm not sure if we do that, but I will follow this up with my colleague Bruno, who is in charge of our media projects. And I see, for instance, we have now the project Initiative for Media Quality and Resilience, which is with the Media Initiative Center as lead applicant. So there I will see whether this is really only focused on Yerevan or whether we branch out, and let's see what we can do. I wanted to also go back to the question on funding. Actually, this project that I just mentioned, an essential component of that project is granting sub-grants to particular journalists and so on. So it's not that we don't do that, but that alone cannot be the solution. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Եվս մեկ հարց, եվս երկու հարց խնդրեմ շատ կարճ։
Two more questions very briefly without any comments so that we fit into the time allotted to us. As a regional media representative, I would like to argue what you said, because it is very important to both for the regional development, for the youth, for media literacy, to build the capacities of the regional media. So two examples. One is the media training in Tavush region, where they gather random people from various sectors. They bring various grants from Yerevan. They implement projects for youth engagement, etc. But the local bodies are not strengthened. So I propose to all of you to consider the regional media as a separate body, as the center of the regional development in general, and for the development of the information in the region, and within all the reforms, consider the regional media a reliable partner whose development is the pledge of the country's development. Call it independent media, free media. They are not earning any money from there is no cooperation with the local government bodies, but there is a good cooperation with the international organizations, with which I'm not happy, because I want them to have local levers to earn money, and the support of all of you. We have experienced the support of all of you from both our local and international partners. There is the cooperation. I'm not complaining because everybody is collaborating with us, but for the regional media, it is important to be perceived as a separate unit and to have its voice in the media field, especially in the western areas where there is the delimitation issue, there is the youth has multiple issues, and there is the population is aging there, and what do you call it? I would add moral media to the independent media and quality media. It is important that this quality media is also moral, adhering to high morality standards. Would you like to reflect, dear speakers, or did you already incorporate your reflection? No, dear Ashod, I don't expect any money from you. He doesn't want to speak with those from whom he doesn't receive money. But I would like to say that there is nothing to comment on here. Thank you. Thank you. One more question, the last question, dear audience.
Thank you very much. My name is Siranush. I'm a freelance journalist from Nagorno-Karabakh. I covered the blockade, ethnic cleansing, and also the issues faced by forcibly displaced population. I was as a forcibly displaced journalist from Nagorno-Karabakh, I would like to thank you for the support we received from the first day of our displacement. We received a lot of support from our Armenian partners. Particularly when you're a freelance journalist, we are supported with any issue, also with the support of international partners. Particularly because those, for instance, who work in the cultural sector, they do not receive any support, but we do. I would also like to refer to the issues faced by displaced population, forcibly displaced population. There is a lot of propaganda against the forcibly displaced persons, a lot of hate speech. You also said that it's very difficult to regulate this hate speech, and this leads to its further spread. Of course, it's not the main reason that more than 10,000 displaced persons have left Armenia. It's mostly due to socioeconomic issues, but still, I think that this hate speech has accounted to that development. And the next thing I would like to say, maybe it is addressed to our international partners, because I cover only for the international media, because I still naively believe that it's due to my coverage that we are able to focus the attention of the international community on the issues faced by forcibly displaced persons. But I would say that persons displaced from Nagorno-Karabakh do not receive the attention that other displaced populations receive. And I'm really hopeful that it's due to my coverage of events and problems faced by the population could support this effort. But recently it is very difficult to reach the international media because they say, we are having elections or we face other issues. How can we, particularly freelance journalists, reach the international media and raise the issue of problems faced by the forcibly displaced populations, and why not the issue of our return to Nagorno-Karabakh? Thank you for asking this question. Who would you like to react?
Have an advice, because there is an organization that is specifically focusing on getting the information out of Armenia to the external audiences. They have needed communications consultants and also companies and also contacts internationally. This organization is called the Armenia Project. And if you want, I can connect you to them. I'll give you my card and we can exchange emails. But other components of our work are not limited to freelance or non-freelance journalists. You can participate in any other components we have, be it the psychological support or the trainings that are organized or any other options that you see for individual journalists. Obviously, it's open to you as well.
Thank you so much. Դե ինչ ավարտեցինք մեր
Դուք եւս հետաքրքրվել մասնակցել. Thank you very much. Hereby we are done with our panel discussion. Շնորհակալություն ձեր մասնակցության համար. Thank you, dear Mr. Malikian, dear Nevar, dear international partners. The Armenian Forum for Democracy has not ended, but our panel discussion has. Thank you very much.